So, previous class, students, we have already discussed about the factors. The arrangement of particles are mainly used for main factors. Yes, that is the interparticle space, interparticle force, Brownian motion, and decay. So, today I am going to start with interconversion of states of matter. Yes, today I am going to start with interconversion of states of matter. Yes, interconversion of states of matter. So let us see what we mean by interconversion of states of matter. Matter can be changed from one state to another. Matter can change from one state to another. For example, water. Water is in the liquid state. Yes? So water in the liquid state can be converted into gaseous state in the form of water vapor on heating, and into ice, that is the solid state on freezing. So this is how the matter can change from one state to another, that is from the liquid state to gaseous state, and then and also into solid state. Yes. So this change of matter from one state to another due to the change in temperature. Is known as interconversion of states of matter. So this change of matter from one state to another due to the change in temperature, that is known as interconversion of states of matter. Let us see now. This is a glass. Yes, a glass of water. Yes, a glass of water. Now, the water here, what happens is the water gets heated up, or the water when it boils, what happens? It changes into steam. Yes, it changes into steam. So this is another vessel, right? Yes. When water is boiled, heating, so here what happens? The steam or in the form of vapor. Water gets evaporated. Evaporation. When water gets evaporated, it gets converted into vapor. Yes, it gets converted into vapor. That is in the gaseous form. Yes. Now this vapor, when it cools down, the vapor or the steam, when it cools down, it changes back into water. It gets converted back into water. Yes, it gets converted back into water. So here you can see the water during evaporation. What happens? The water gets evaporated and gets converted in the form of vapor. Or when water is boiled, it gets converted in the form of steam. And after that, the water, what happens? The vapor when it cools down, it changes back into water. That process is known as condensation. That is, the vapor, that is the gaseous form, is changed back into water. So that is known as condensation. So the vapor on cooling changes back into liquid, that is water. That is known as condensation. Now same thing, that is water on freezing. So when you freeze, on freezing it gets converted into ice. That is in the solid state. Solid state. And when it melts, it comes back into water. So when ice melts, it comes back into water. So this is the interconversion of states of water. Yes. So here water, what happens? Here this is water. Water on evaporation, it gets converted into vapor, and on cooling, it again comes back to water during condensation. And water, when you freeze, what happens? It changes into ice. That is in the solid state. And when you melt ice, it comes back into water. That is the melting. So freezing and melting. So this is how the change of matter from one state to another state, it takes place due to the change in temperature. This is known as the interconversion of states of matter. Yes. Now let us see in detail about each conversion, that is interconversion of states of matter. How it takes place from solid to liquid, liquid to gas, yes, and then what are the steps. So different changes that is takes place. So let us see in detail about the interconversion of states of matter in detail. Yes. Now, first thing that I am going to explain, that is from solid to liquid. Yes, interconversion from solid to liquid. Solid to liquid. Yes, the process by which the solid changes into liquid. The process by which the solid changes into liquid on heating. Is called as melting. For example, solid. For example, ice. Ice melts into water. Ice melts into water on heating. Ice melts into water on heating. So here solid, the process by which the solid gets converted into liquid on heating. Yes, so example is ice melts into water on heating. Next, the point where the temperature at which the solid starts melting. The point where the solid starts melting is known as the melting point. The temperature at which the solid starts melting is known as the melting point. Now let us see from liquid. The process by which the liquid on heating is or about its boiling point is known as the boiling. Yes, it gets converted into gas. The liquid is the process by which the liquid gets converted into gas on heating Yes, on heating it gets converted into gas. Or during evaporation, what happens during evaporation? The liquid gets converted into gas at any temperature below its boiling point. That process is known as evaporation. That process is known as evaporation. So here, liquid, the process by which the liquid on heating gets converted into gas. Yes, gets converted into gas. So during evaporation, what happens? The liquid gets converted into gas at any temperature below its boiling point. Yes. Now let us see from gas, the process by which the gas on cooling, gas on cooling. So gas on cooling, it comes back to liquid. So the process by which the gas is on cooling gets converted back into liquid. That process is known as condensation. That process is known as condensation. The process is known as condensation. When, for example, water vapor. Yes, water vapor changes back into, cools and come back in the form of water. So water vapor changes into water. That is an example. So here water vapor for condensation, example is water vapor changes back into water. That process is known as condensation. Understood now, children? Yes. So what is condensation? So when the water vapor, that is the gaseous form, gets converted back into the liquid state. Yes. So gaseous form means in the form of water vapor. So water vapor, what happens? Water vapor, it changes back into water on cooling. You should write cooling, on cooling. That process is known as condensation. Yes. Now let us see the next. That is from the next one is from liquid. So here the liquid on cooling, it gets converted into solid by freezing. Freezing. On freezing, what happens? The liquid gets converted into solid. Yes. For example, water. Yes. Water changes into ice. So the liquid changes into solid. When it changes into ice, when you freeze it, right? When you freeze water, what happens? It becomes ice. So that is liquid, the process by which the liquid on cooling, it gets converted into solid on freezing. On freezing. So that is known as freezing. Now from solid, the process by which the solid gets converted into gas. Solid getting converted into gas without passing through the liquid state. Without passing through the liquid state, it is converted into gas. So you have already learned and you have already seen the experiment in the previous class, that is in the separating techniques I have shown you sublimation. This is how sublimation takes place. So here what happens? Here solid is converted directly into gas. Solid gets converted into gas without passing through the liquid state. So for example, I have shown you sulfur. Yes, when sulfur is heated, what happens? The sulfur, it gets changed into, that is solid gets changed into vapor. Yes, it gets converted into vapor without passing through the liquid state. So that process is known as sublimation. That process is known as sublimation. So sublimation is the process by which the that is the solid gets converted into, that is the solid gets converted into into gas, that is into gaseous state, without passing to the liquid state. That process is known as sublimation. That process is known as sublimation. Yes? Now, let us see the next one, that is the last one, is from gas. Gas back to solid. So here solid to gas. That process is known as sublimation. So now, the previous I was explaining that the solid, that is solid, is converted into gas. That process is known as sublimation, right? So sublimation is the process by which the solid substance gets converted into gaseous form, without passing through the liquid state. So that process is known as sublimation. That process is known as sublimation. Now next let us see, that is from the gas. The gas, the process by which the vapor is, gas means it will be in the form of vapor, right? So the vapor gets converted back into solid without passing through the liquid state. That process is known as deposition. That process is known as deposition, or it is also called as resublimation. It is known as desublimation. Yes, so either you can say deposition or you can say it as desublimation. Yes, it is called as desublimation. What do you mean by desublimation, students? It is the process by which the vapor, that is the vapor, changes into solid state. Vapor changes into solid state without passing through the liquid state. That process is known as deposition or desublimation. So you all understood what is the difference between sublimation and desublimation. Sublimation means that is the process by which the solid substance, it gets converted into gaseous form, that is in the form of vapor, yes, without passing through the liquid state. Whereas in desublimation, the process by which the vapor changes into solid without passing through the liquid state. That process is known as desublimation, or it is also known as deposition. So students, today we have learned about the interconversion of states of matter, right? So once again I will just recap it what we have learned today. So first one is the process by which the solid changes into liquid on heating. Solid changes into liquid on heating. Yes. That example also I have mentioned. So that is the ice melts on heating into water. Yes. Then we have learned from liquid on heating. Liquid on heating, the process by which the liquid on heating, it gets converted into gas. So during evaporation, what happens? The water gets evaporated and it gets converted in the form of water vapor. Yes. So that process is known as evaporation. Then we have learned what is condensation. That is, the water vapor cools and comes back in the form of liquid. So that process is known as condensation. Yes. Then after that we have learned from the liquid to solid. That is, the on cooling, what happens? It changes into, the liquid changes into solid. For example, the water, when you keep water in the refrigerator, what happens? It gets converted into ice, right? So it is in the solid form. So liquid or freezing into solid. Yes. Then we have learned the sublimation. That is, solid gets The solid substance gets directly into gaseous form, that is in the water vapor form. Yes, and that process without passing through the liquid state, that is known as sublimation. And the last one is the gas, that is the vapor changes back into solid. Vapor changes back into solid and without passing through the liquid state. Yes, we need to write without passing through the liquid state. That's very important. Yes, so that process is known as deposition or desublimation. So students, with this, let me wind up for today. Thank you.